Hello everyone. We were discussing about the Linux introduction. Today we are going to discuss about the its various flavors or various types of the Linux operating system. So let's proceed with the types of Linux software package that we are having currently in existence. The first one is the Red Hat Linux operating system. It is one of the original Linux distribution. That means it is the original Linux that was first developed and came into existence. So the commercial non-free version is Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is aimed at big companies using Linux servers and desktops in a big way. It is a free version under the Fedora project. Then comes Debian GNU Linux. It is also a free software distribution. It's popularly used on the servers. However, Debian is not what many would consider a distribution for beginners. It is not considered to be main distribution for beginners, as it's not designed with ease of use in mind, because the Debian Linux is designed with such a perspective that to be used by the sophisticated users existing in the market, you can say, and to be used with sophisticated tools and techniques, also provides sophisticated and highly specialized services and features. Then comes SUSE Linux. The SUSE Linux was recently purchased by Novell. This distribution is primarily available for pay because it contains many commercial programs, although there is a stripped down free version that you can download. It is a paid version of the Linux operating system because it has many commercial applications and programs built into it that are on the paid basis. So the Linux becomes in a paid version with the embedding of these commercial application in it. But if you want to download a lighter version of the SUSE Linux, then you can also download it at free of cost. But the commercial programs that are there in the SUSE Linux, that will not be available to be used by the users. For a free trial version will be provided. This is the logo for the SUSE Linux. Then comes Mandrake Linux. The Mandrake is perhaps strongest on the desktop systems. It is the strongest Linux distribution that is available in the market to be used on the desktop computer systems. It is originally based off Red Hat Linux. It is originally based off of Red Hat Linux. That means it is not in the direct you can say the main distribution. It is the main focus on the Mandrake Linux is done on the basis of the Red Hat Linux. That means most of the features are embedded from the Red Hat Linux into the Mandrake Linux to be used it effectively and efficiently. And Gentoo Linux. Gentoo is a specialty distribution meant for programs. This is the distribution of Linux operating system, which is basically aimed to be used by the programmers who are highly sophisticated programmers making different programs and software packages. It is specially meant for them to be used, as it provides various sophisticated tools and techniques for the programmers to develop their programs with ease and effectiveness. So now let's have a comparison between the Linux operating system, Mac operating system, and Windows operating system. So if we talk about Linux, the Linux users have the benefit of having low resource requirements. The Linux operating system requires very low resources as compared to others. Linux can be installed on a PC just having the bare minimum resources. With the minimum configuration, Linux can be installed because it is a very light version operating system. In fact, Linux is so versatile that almost any type of computer and console can probably support it, except Macintosh computers, which come preloaded with Mac operating system. That means all the systems existing in the world are compatible with the Linux operating system except Apple's Macintosh computers, as these are all inbuilt with the Mac OS X operating system. Then Macintosh computers come preloaded with the Mac OS X operating system, and the OS and this operating system can only be installed on the Mac. Now see, other operating system can't be installed on the Macintosh computers, and Mac operating system can't be installed on other computer systems. So these computers are considerably more expensive than other PCs. So these are expensive ones because they have a dedicated operating system on the dedicated machines. Even an entry level Mac can cost almost twice the amount required to assemble a Windows PC. If we talk about the Macintosh system, then these cost as much as double of the Windows operating system if you talk in simple terms. Then comes Windows operating system. It is a pretty versatile and can be installed on PCs having variable amounts of resources. There are versions of Windows, for example, Windows 95, 98, Windows 2000, and Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10. And most probably now the latest version that is going to come in the existence is Windows 20, maybe. So there are the various versions that can be installed on PCs as little resources as 233 megahertz processor and 64 MB RAM. That means it has such a variations in its configuration that even a system with a very less configuration of 233 megahertz processor and 64 MB of only RAM can also have a Windows operating system, going up forward on the highly sophisticated configured computer systems. So let's talk about the advantages of Linux operating system. In this, you don't need to spend time and money to obtain licenses since Linux and much of its software come with a GNU General Public License, which is free of cost. Linux doesn't need to be rebooted periodically to maintain performance levels. Linux provides persistent high performance on workstations and on networks. That means a consistent performance is provided by the Linux operating system on workstations and if we talk about in a network environment. Linux was developed by a group of programmers over the internet and has therefore strong support for network functionality. Client and server systems can be easily set up on any computer using the Linux operating system. Well, Linux can be used for high performance server applications also, desktop applications also, and the embedded systems. It runs on all common Unix software packages and can process all common file formats. The large number of Linux distributions leave you with a choice. Each distribution is developed and supported by a different organization. That means, as you know, Linux is a open source software program, so the source is available to all. So anyone who can make changes in the operating system for a betterment or with a new functionality can make changes in the source code and then make the and then release that newly customized operating system with a new name free of cost to the general public to be used by other users in the uh, market. So there is a lot of variety of choices are there existing in the Linux operating system to be used by different kind of requirements of the different users. Most Linux distributions come with user friendly installation and setup programs. Linux continues work well even when the hard disk is almost full. If the hard disk full, still the Linux can continue to work. Linux is designed to do many things at the same time. That means multitasking is supported by the Linux operating system. Linux is also one of the most secure operating systems. The walls and the flexible file access permission systems prevent access by unwanted visitors or viruses. So this is the basic Linux systems architecture where inner core is the hardware, then hardware is in direct contact with the kernel system, and kernel is then in contact with the shell, which in turn is with contact with the various applications programs that are built on the system that are being used by the various users, user 1 to user n number of users. So the Linux system architecture is consists of all the following layer. First one is the hardware layer, which consists of all peripheral devices, RAM, hard disk drives, CPU, floppy drives, motherboards, and all kind of hardware components of the system. Then second one is the kernel part. It is the core component of operating system which interacts directly with the hardware and provides low level services to the upper level components. That means it provides an interface between the hardware and the upper level layer components like application programs for the various functions to be performed. Then comes shell. It is an interface to the kernel, hiding complexity of the kernel's functions from the user. It is that means shell is acts as an interface to the kernel and the application programs, which hides the complexity of the kernel's structure and architecture from the naive users who are using the system. Then the utilities. Utilities are the different programs or the application programs which are used by the user for performing various kinds of functions in the operating system. This is the basic interface of the Linux operating system. When you start the Linux operating system, the window appears in front of the user. This is also another variation of the Linux operating system's interface. Then there are some false myths about the Linux. The first one is Linux is too difficult for ordinary people to use because it uses only text and requires programming. So it is a myth. It's not like that. It also provides a graphical user interface and it is very easy to use by the users. Myth number two is Linux is less secure than Microsoft Windows because the source code is available to anybody. But actually, it is the highest secure operating system to be used in the current scenario. And third myth is it is not worth bothering to learn Linux because most companies use Microsoft Windows. But actually, most of the good reviewed industries are on using the Linux operating system. So uh, this is also a myth. Myth number four is that Linux cannot have much of a future because it is free and thus there is no way for businesses to make money from it. But actually, it is not like that. If because the code of the Linux is customizable and any organization can customize it according to its requirements and according to its products and can embed their own product into the operating system and then can release that version into the market to be used by the others. Myth number five is that Linux and other free software is a type of software piracy because much of it was copied from other operating systems. See, the operating system is designed basically to provide the various functioning tasks to the computer system. So it is not about the piracy because it is the open source program which is licensed under the GNU license. So it is not a pirated software, it is the general software, and the free code is provided to the user so that they can customize according to their requirements and needs. So these are the various popular commands used in the Linux, that is cd, man, ls, cp, mv, mkdir, rmdir, touch, rm, tar. These are the various commands, basic commands that are used in the Linux operating system for providing various functions and utilities. Then interesting facts about Linux we discuss. First one is Linux is not an operating system, but it is the kernel. GNU license Linux is the operating system and it comes in several hundreds of flavors. Linux kernel was second one is Linux kernel was written by a 21-year Finnish college student as a part of his hobby. Yep, his name is Linus Torvalds. Torvalds created Linux based on GNU General Public License. Perhaps Torvalds would have never written his own kernel if GPL would be having its own kernel and driver. Fourth one is major part of today's Linux kernel is written in C programming language and assembly language. Only 2% of today's kernel contains code written by Torvalds. That means all of the code written by the Torvalds has been lapsed and the new code is with new functionalities, with new features is there in this operating system. Also, the Linux kernel's official mascot is a penguin named Tux, abbreviation of Tuxedo. The idea that Linux had a pet penguin comes from the Linus Torvalds himself. And the applications supported by Linux are for editing documents, office software, for example, word processor, spreadsheet, presentation, database application. Other applications are for drawing, or dra is used for surfing, Firefox is used for audio, the xmms x multimedia system which is used to play digital sound files, and sound juicer, cd ripper which is used to burn your own cds in the system. So this is the summary about what we have discussed in the tutorial. The Linux and the networking go in hand. The Linux kernel has support for all common and most uncommon network protocols. The standard Unix networking tools are provided in each distribution. Next to those, most distributions offer tools for easy network installation and management. Linux is well known as a stable platform for running various internet services. The amount of internet software is endless. Unix can be just as well used and administered from a remote location using one of the several solutions for remote execution of programs. We briefly touched the subject of security. Linux is an ideal firewall system, light and cheap, but can be used in several other network functions such as routers and proxy servers. Increasing network security is mainly done by applying frequent updates and common sense in the system. So this was all about the Linux and its various flavors that are existing in the market to be used by the users. If you find any query related to the Linux operating system, you can contact me on my contact details. Thank you very much.